Beyond Two Souls, the newest game from David Cage here. So let's see, graphics. Roll our footage, would you? So.
Oh man.
So back
it's exciting.
Back in February at the DICE Summit, David Cage got up there and he did a speech. One of the many things he said though is that if you review a game and you just give a score and say I'm giving this a score and you don't really explain why, then that's not really the way to do things if you're going to review a game. So we're not doing scores for his game. We haven't done scores for the last few games here on GameSlean, but we're going to run down the categories here, and we're going to try and give this game its due. So, graphics. If you've seen the screens or any footage for this game, you played the demo, you know it looks great. During the cutscenes or scripted events, of course, they can push more polygons, and you can see the difference between that and during the standard gameplay. So I'd say during the standard gameplay, the graphics are about on par with Last of Us. Maybe slightly less details when things get busy, but it's pretty close. And again, there's a difference, of course, if there's scripted events or cutscenes. That's when they have the high poly models, and it looks they're getting really, really close to photorealism with some of this stuff here.
Yeah.
So,
I can't argue with that. The game. I only played the demo. I did beat the demo. It looks great. The game. Just on the subject of graphics alone, the game looks really, really good.
Yeah, you bet.
I think that's what all those games are about, and I think we talked about this on the last episode. It's they do. David Cage just does a great job of giving that cinematic look, and the game looks incredible. Do you guys think it's better than The Last of Us? Like graphically?
It's two different types of game though. I mean, Last of Us Last of Us is a true game. This was just like an interactive
movie.
This was like a spiritual successor to like Dragon's Lair, in that it's just like scripted events and you push a button and something happens.
Yeah.
Last of Us had a lot more going on, so I think it's tough to compare the two. I think in terms of like just interactive environments and like having to like actually do things in the game, I think The Last of Us has better graphics because there's more stuff going on. These are all just like set pieces.
Yeah.
For the most part, yeah.
But it looks good. I mean, for whatever it is, it looks cool.
So I want to say some of the characters, though, some of them do have that uncanny valley effect a little bit. It's especially on the faces, or if they're idle. It's a little bit. It's minor. It's not that big deal, but it is noticeable. And so, aside from that, there's a variety of environments. Everything in the environments are super detailed. There's a little bit of texture pop here and there, nothing major. There's a couple spots where the frame rate chugs, but those are, again, few and far between. All that stuff is super minor, though. It doesn't impact the quality too much. And so full marks for the graphics, definitely.
Right. I would say that my only gripe really with that is when you switch to Aiden, it has a tendency to kind of like everything gets really like murky. Like when you're going through a wall and everything, it's tough to tell what's going on sometimes.
Oh yeah. And also because the controls for Aiden are a little bit like they're pretty sensitive. You can get like turned around and mixed up pretty easily, I think too, right?
Yeah, like when I was trying to like do some of the stuff with Aiden, it's real easy to get to go into like the wrong room or like go into like kind of just turn yourself around.
Yeah,
so it ends up becoming very confusing. And like I would say that's using Aiden is kind of like a weak point of the game. Like I know you're supposed to, but like it was kind of frustrating at the same time to use Aiden.
Yeah. I can see that perspective definitely. One final thing on graphics, just the spirits and the entities, because Aiden is a spirit, and we'll get into that later, but there's other spirits and entities in the game. Some of them are enemies, but most of them have really, really good effects on them, and overall everything in the game is animated really, really well. So that's about it for graphics.
Yeah, it looks great. I mean, this is probably this is the last, if not one of the last big PS3 games, so it looks good.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's kick it on over to sound. As far as sound goes, I'll start with the music. Now, if you played Heavy Rain, there's going to be the inevitable comparison between these two because Heavy Rain was the last one they did. Now, the music in Heavy Rain, I think overall was a little bit better than the music that's included here. It fit the tone of the game better, and it was a little bit more memorable. I mean, the music. This game has its moments where the music really, really fits, but Heavy Rain, I think, stands out if you compare the two. So if you played Heavy Rain, I think you'll understand what I'm saying at. In this game, in this one here, though, and beyond, the music during the action scenes is what stands out. So usually there'll be some intense thing going on, and during those parts of the game, that's where the music in this game really shines and does a super good job driving things home.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the music was really forgettable though, which was disappointing.
Yeah,
I mean,
I thought so too.
If David Cage is really going for a cinematic experience, I mean, he can't just focus on the visuals, which I know that he considers himself a storyteller, so he focused on the visuals and the story, but it seems like he neglected one of the most important aspects of cinematic storytelling, which is the music, which is a little disappointing.
Okay, let me ask you. Sorry, Nick. Let me ask you this. Did you play Heavy Rain? And
I did not play Heavy Rain.
Okay, because that would be a good. The music in Heavy Rain, I believe they won a few awards for that, and the music in Heavy Rain was very, very well received. And I wasn't going to bring this up for the review because I want to keep things moving along here. But actually, the guy that did the music for Heavy Rain, and I didn't even know this until earlier this week, he actually passed away back in January. And from what I understand,
really?
he was working on this. And so since he wasn't available anymore, they had to bring in, I think it's Hans Zimmer and his protege, Lauren Balfe, and they're credited as doing the music. Now I don't know if the other guy, Norman Corbet, if he had any tracks in here, but that's I think, and he worked on David Cage's other games as well, from what I understand. So that's a tough one. The guy unfortunately passed away. So
Yeah,
I mean, if it was Hans Zimmer, I mean, perhaps Hans Zimmer and his protege didn't really consider it. Like, I know that they primarily do scores to film.
Yeah.
But it's like perhaps because this was a video game, they didn't treat it quite as seriously.
I want to say too, most of Zimmer's music, Pirates of the Caribbean is one I know that I like the music from that. But aside from that, I want to say not to insult, but most of Zimmer's music is largely forgettable as well, at least from my point of view.
Yeah, I mean, he's not in terms of composers, I mean, I know that the most memorable composers I can think of in recent memory would be, Danny Elfman, of course, and also Harry Gregson Wilson, who worked on some of the Metal Gear games.
Yeah.
And I mean, those tracks are extremely memorable.
Definitely. So I think, unfortunately, I think it was an issue of the guy wasn't available because like we said, but that's why I wanted to mention that Heavy Rain really had some standout music and everything in there. The guy nailed it. Like, the guy had done TV scores and I think maybe some smaller films, but he was working. He had everything going on Heavy Rain. The music in Heavy Rain was just perfect for what he was trying to do in terms of the story and gameplay as well. Everything just fit.
Well, I mean, this begs the question.
Heavy Rain was awesome.
But this begs the question:
really
was he not available in spirit form?
Oh, jeez, that's awful.
Hey, I'm just asking.
Yeah, no. So continuing on though, the sound effects too. Let's move away from the music now. The sound effects are very good. Everything is high quality. The sound, the sounds that the other entities make, the sounds are scary as hell. When you're controlling Aiden, as we mentioned before, and you're controlling and doing things as him, I think the sounds during that, there's some weird sound. Those add the appropriate dimension for that as well, I think too.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The sounds are all appropriate for what they are. So I mean, I can't really offer any sort of great praise or criticism. I mean, the sounds are solid and they fit the action as well as they can.
Yeah, right. I feel like for most big titles, I would say this is one of the last big titles. Usually, I think sound is pretty spot on, and they know what to do. When the title has a budget like this, or if it's at this particular level of quality, then it's pretty much expected, right? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
All right. So let's touch on the voice acting real quick. Now, the voice acting is great as you would expect because they used real actors. A lot of times, though, I think Ellen Page, who's the lead character here, a lot of times she sounds like she's mumbling, but I'm not sure if that was if that was a direction for her character or not. It's just something I noticed.
It could be a direction from Cage himself. I mean, yeah, I know he considers himself a filmmaker primarily, so I mean that could have been something for the character,
Yeah.
I thought that Willem Dafoe. I first of all, let me put it out there and say I think Willem Dafoe is a fantastic actor.
Right.
And he did a great job with his voice acting.
Sure, yeah, I agree.
But yeah, I mean her voice acting was solid. But I don't think it was. I don't think it was her best performance.
Okay.
But it was solid.
More on that, I think they did. If we're going to talk about the voice acting, I think they did overuse the F word just a little bit, and maybe because all of us were just coming off GTA where the F word was in every sentence, but
Right.
I mean, a couple of spots I could see them using it, and I think it was it was justified, but other times, I mean, I think they were just doing it, and it wasn't really needed. So
To make it a mature title or whatever.
yeah. They do seem to use it a little too often, but it wasn't that big a deal. It's just, so that's it. That's all for sound. Sound is great overall. No complaints. Right. Good job on the sound. Gameplay. Let's move on to gameplay. Arguably the most important category. So I'll sum up a little bit here. So of course you play as Jodie, and you also control Aiden, who is the spirit or entity that's attached to her. Aiden can move objects. He can break stuff, and he can also possess other characters and let you control them. So he can't go too far away from Jodie, though, because that'll hurt her. And that's pretty much the entire gameplay of the game. You go through switching between the two of them. You switch to Aiden when he's needed. Or sometimes the game will actually force you to view things from Aiden's perspective, for whatever reason, for narrative or for other purposes. So like right here, she's getting ready to this is like a covert op she's trying to run, so she's got to use Aiden to do some of this stuff. Without any of the other NPCs noticing. So yeah, you can go. This is what he's doing right here. He's going through the wall. He's going to try and go up to the second floor to go to this safe that they need to get documents out of.
One of the more frustrating aspects of the game is using Aiden.
You can see it as that kind of like murky look around the borders, and it's like the controls change. It gets really sensitive, and it's really
floaty. It's not like hard to use.
It's super floaty.
I mean, it's not that hard to use, I guess, but like,
well, it seems
I found myself struggling with it quite a bit.
It seems like you just have to be like really patient and take your time with it, because otherwise you're like, I think you just mentioned it, Tom. You're just gonna get really confused and you're not gonna know where you are.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a fast-paced game, but I mean, even still, like, I mean, the game, it's too slowly paced. I think it definitely could have used something to make it more engaging. I mean, I think David Cage relied too heavily on story, and he didn't focus on gameplay mechanics. Like, I mean, he looked at this like an interactive film.
Yeah, and I think goes back to what I was gonna say. If you're gonna make, it's one thing to make like a movie because you can just visualize that, but if you're making a game, you have to go gameplay, graphics, and story. Like you have to have, to me, you have to have all those three elements, and if you don't have one of those, it kind of, to me, weakens it a bit.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it definitely. I can see where he's going with this. David Cage wants somebody to let him make a movie. I think that somebody needs to just let him make a movie and stop letting him make video games.
Just get it over with.
Yeah. I mean, the game plays like fine, but it's slow, and some of the controls just don't work. They don't they don't not work, but they don't work either. They're kind of just there to move the story along. Everything is just the push of a button. It's like I said, it's like you're playing a successor to Dragon's Lair. So it's like if you go into this thinking that you're going to be playing this game that involves like lots of quick action and like reflexes, things of that nature, you're not. Like, you can play the entire game with one hand if you really want to.
Yeah.
All right, so I want to mention, again, comparing it to Heavy Rain and maybe a little bit farther, Fahrenheit or Indigo Prophecy. In this one, they did away with most of the QT prompts. Heavy Rain, for those of you who played it, Heavy Rain was QTE City. So some of them are still in this game, though, but most of the time there's just a white dot that prompts you that you need, telling you need to do something. And then there's the action sequences where there's no prompt at all, but the game kind of goes into slow motion, and then you have to push the right analog stick in the correct direction. It's usually in the direction that Jodie is moving, and then that'll prevent you from getting attacked, or that'll help you do the QT correctly. And sometimes it's tricky, but I actually like that better than just the ridiculous, crazy prompts flashing all over the place like in Heavy Rain, because it definitely did that at times. And like you mentioned, Tom, the controls are clunky. The other thing I didn't really care for is that a lot of times, or a lot of points in the game railroads you into only going to the areas you're supposed to. So like if you try to wander outside of like the gameplay area that you're supposed to go, Jody will just turn around and go back in the other direction. So there's really no like exploration or like extra stuff to do. You're on a set path in this game, and that's it.
It's extremely linear. I mean, David Cage wrote a story, and he wants you to follow in the direction of that story with with very little to no deviation.
And that's it.
That's it. You can't go off the beaten path.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about the story then now, because this, again, we've been hinting at this and kind of saying it. Maybe he wants to be a film director, but he's this entire game is primarily story driven. Now you're gonna play this game. None of it is in chronological order. It's very disconnected and disjointed. It almost feels like he came up with a bunch of different scenarios, and then he had trouble with the in-between parts, so everything just got kind of mixed up. And I've seen the game being criticized for this, but to be honest, that didn't bother me a whole lot. It's just the game jumps around a lot, and you jump between different ages. Like you jump between Jody at different points of time in her life. Like I said, a lot of people are going to be confused, and it's not going to make 100% sense. But it didn't bother me that much. So the other thing I want to mention, the big reveal at the end. We did touch on this last week when I said, there's going to be some stupid plot twist. This was on our top 5.
Of course.
I want to say that the big reveal at the end is not the typical David Cage twist. In my opinion, it was very well done, and I was surprised. There's multiple endings here, but I like the ending I got. And I want to say, in terms of replay value, there's definitely some here if you want to replay chapters and do things differently. I'd say there's a fair amount of replay value. You can also play this game with 2 people. So what happens when you're playing with 2 players is the second player will control Aiden, and then you can hit the triangle button to switch back and forth. So if you're playing as Jody and you hit it, you give control to the other person, and then it works. Just go back and forth. So I think that's a cool thing that they added in there, so you can play with 2 people.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, just to touch on your thing with like the replay value, I think that happens with like, Indigo Prophecy and Heavy Rain, and I think that's kind of what personally draws me to those games is the replay value, because you have so many outcomes, and certain characters die, you can have them live. It's just kind of interesting how it plays out.
Okay,
well,
sure.
I guess that was Nick's point.
Yeah.
I mean, from what I played of the game, and like, let me first say that I have not beaten the game, so I cannot offer you the full scope of the entire story.
Okay.
But from what I played, I mean, I've read a lot of things about David Cage, and like about how he is trying to make interactive film. The story is intriguing. I mean, the story is interesting, that's for sure. It is riddled with a few cliches, but the story overall is interesting. It's an interesting experiment in film and movie and film and video games kind of coming together. So I'm curious to see where he can take it and where other people are going to take the genre in the future.
Okay. Yeah, and again, I was really happy with the way they wrapped things up here with this game. Turned out really good. So let's go to our overall. Let's put up a score here and say what we're gonna recommend on this game. I'm saying buy or must play. This is a game you need to play, and I've said on the show before that I like games that take risks, games that don't follow the norm. Quantic has been using this formula for their last 3 games now, and this one, I'll say, between this, Heavy Rain, and Indigo Prophecy, this one is the best one. They really set the bar with this one. They don't release these too often, but when they do, I'm going to say they're definitely worth your time. I want to point out there's been some other reviews on this game that have been a bit low, and to be honest, I don't know what
majorly low ones.
Unusually low, you say?
I would say that IGN and like Destructoid and other places like that have been giving this game super low scores. And while I will agree with a lot of their points, I will disagree with them in that this game, like they're saying basically don't play this game. I will disagree with you about buying the game, but I will disagree with the major news media outlets saying don't even play the game. And I'll say that the game was interesting enough and it's polished enough. And I mean it's an interesting title. I will say if you can get the game cheap or if you can borrow it or rent it, it's definitely worth your time, but maybe not $60.
Yeah, I'm saying if you're into something like this, it's definitely a buy, but at minimum, it's a must play. So
Yeah, for sure.
My point before was I don't know what these guys giving it low scores are talking about. That to me is just absolutely crazy. You got to understand this is not a shooting game, guys. It's more about the story and characters. So Ellen Page was the right actress for this role rather.
For this row.
This role.
Yeah. For this row, yo.
What the hell did I say? Ellen Page was the right actress for this role. And again, Willem Dafoe and the other supporting actors did excellent jobs as well. So yeah, overall, must play.
Must play. I will agree. I will agree with you there. It's an interesting experiment in film and gaming. So I think people need to at least give it a try.
Very
Definitely.
good. So there you go, guys. That's Beyond Two Souls. If you got a PS3, check it out.